we doing? Yep. Welcome, Delco. We're back. We're back in Delco here. Welcome to bring everybody back to the home of this man's view. We're here at a new location, Hanrahan's Irish Pub. So we'd like to thank Jimmy for giving us the opportunity here to do the show, and hopefully we will help everybody out here and have a good show. Just to give a little update, Carl is home, so he's back at his house. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It's good. For today, it's good.
For today, it's a good thing.
We'll
We'll see how tomorrow works out with Sue and Carl.
He'll be right. He's happy to be home. It's just going to take a little bit to get back to where he was, but yeah, it's good to have him.
Exactly. So we're here with Greg Gross.
Absolutely.
And being one of the top pinch hitters in baseball, what do you think of analytics?
Started off.
Yeah, we're going right to heart.
Well, that's probably why I'm sitting here. is the analytics. Now, it has a really good place. There's a lot of information, and a lot of it is really valuable and very useful. But it's like anything else. When you take it to the extreme, and that's all you're doing, then it's going to cause problems.
Right, exactly, and it hurts players. You see a lot of players get hurt by changing their swings and not helping them.
Yeah, it's well, I always use the analogy that it seems like today's game we're trying to make hitters golfers.
Right.
We're trying to have a certain position to get into in order to stay in the zone longer and everything else. And that's fine as long as the pitch is in that one particular spot. It works great in a cage, hitting off a tee or hitting off a coach. You can manipulate that very well. But when it comes to competing at the velocities that they have to compete at, then it's tough.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, a golfer, the ball doesn't move. So
it's a little bit of stuff is it's information, right? So it's information that you can use. It doesn't mean that they necessarily, the teams need to use it per se in the way that they are using it, right? I mean, that's information that's out there. It's good to have, but the way that teams are using it and sort of going all in sometimes with their information.
Well, the problem is they sort of blanket it.
Right.
It's like, this is what he throws. The problem is, for every hitter, when you walk into the box, if I walk into the box and I see a guy throw, my eyes are telling me one thing. You walk in the box and your eyes are going to tell you something different.
Sure.
And his eyes are going to tell him something different. It's not, okay, it's 95.
Right.
Okay, well, 95 to all the hitters is going to look totally different.
Sure.
And that's the problem I think they have.
Right.
It's just 95.
Right.
And it's cut and dry, and this is what he throws. Well, it doesn't. When you're competing, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
Because you got human emotions.
Sure.
And you don't know how the guy's feeling or anything like that. So it makes it tough.
As you're coaching the last few years, I know you coached up to 2019, but some of those, we always talk about a balance. Did you find that there was a balance towards the end, or did it seem like it was overly analytical and not as much room for?
It was just starting to get too much.
Right.
Where I've noticed the big difference and where it really helps you, even at our level at AAA, was the defensive end of the game.
Okay.
I mean, you could pull up and position guys, and it was amazing how many times we had guys positioned that normally, if you want to call it in the past, old days or whatever, would have been base hits, would have been extra base hits, but were outs.
Right.
And the percentage of the hits that we took away and runs we saved far more than the ones we gave up by a ball rolling through an open hole.
Well, I do think it's in hitting, but field position. That's the thing.
Thing is, I think it works better for pitchers because they're the ones that have the ball in their hand. They're the ones that have control. Their motion is always going to be the same. So if the analytics can point out that when you spin the ball, it has so many revolutions or whatever. Well, they can determine whether that pitch is a slider or a curveball. And the kid might think, well, I throw a slider, but it really was a bad curveball, you know. But they could work on him to arm position, whatnot, that he could develop a curveball, better breaking ball, which is going to make him more effective. So I think it works, at least the way it's set up now, it works a whole lot better for pitchers and a whole lot better for defense. And they still got some kinks as far as the offense goes. Because you can't quantify all the positions, you know, strike zone, the speed of the ball, and everything else.
How often would it sort of get frustrating, sort of when you thought in your mind from doing this for many years, how someone should be positioned or play the game, but the information you're getting is different? I mean, how do you balance that as a coach when you think, hey, this is probably not what I should be doing, but it tells me I should be doing this?
Well, I mean, you just have to trust it. I mean, on the defense, I didn't use it a whole lot. I used it on the hitting end of it. I used it more so I could identify exactly like you just talked about, whether the guy's breaking ball was a slider, whether it was a curveball. And that's through the computer, the way they are now, you can determine the way the ball is spinning. So when you go over a pregame plan or whatever, okay, he's got a fastball, I could definitely say he's got a slider, split, change. You can quantify those kind of things. But as far as what he threw and what he's going to throw, not so much. I always wanted the hitters to let me know what you see.
Sure.
It doesn't matter what the computer sees and what I see.
Right.
It's so there. That's where I found it useful. But like I said, on the defensive end, it was just crazy.
Sure.
It was fun to, you know, set it up and set your defense.
And we've known from the different shows that a lot of the older school guys don't necessarily like it as much as some of the changes in the game. But what I want to ask is what the younger guys, they don't really know anything else, anything different. They sort of been taught that. Are they good with it, or they don't like it either?
Well, the younger players coming up, like, because that's what they're used to.
Yeah, they're not used to anything else.
They've grown up going to showcases, drive lines, all these facilities that's what they preach and everything else. So it sort of has its own, I guess, lingo, and they're used to that. So that's why you find a lot of the people who worked at these places are now at the professional level because they talk that lingo. And the players understand the lingo, but to practically go out and compete and apply and just go compete, they have a hard time with that.
Sure.
So if something's not quite right, they have a hard time, what I call making an adjustment in game.
Sure.
Whereas, other players, my day, it was more about a feel, and you knew, hey, this guy throws really hard.
Yeah.
So I got to be a little quicker, and things like that. Well, now they say, well, here's these numbers. Okay, well, like I said before, those numbers are fine. That gives you an outline,
Right.
but it doesn't fill the outline.
Sure.
There's too many layers, especially the hitting, that play into.
It's more like a tool to use per se, not the end
Yes,
game.
exactly.
So
And they'll get there. They'll get there. They'll find.
Find
It
balance.
might take 5 years or whatever, but they'll find it.
So isn't that though taken away from the game? Isn't the game wants more offense, speed it up? I guess maybe.
Oh, no, it's
Yeah,
as much as I love the game. It's hard for me to watch a game
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
because it's every swing is trying for a home run and every pitch is trying to strike somebody out. So you got 6 pitchers on each side almost every night.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to watch. I don't know how many games I've watched from start to finish.
Well, I got a lot of gray hair watching this year.
I'll go. I mean, I wear out that remote. Going game to game because my God, every count's 3-2.
Right.
And I think we're going to see a lot more injuries because everything is max effort, whether it's swing or whether it's the ball that's swung.
Yeah, especially the pitching.
Yeah, and they don't know how to pitch.
Yeah, they're just throwers.
They're just
Well,
throwers.
that's sort of what I worry about going forward. You said about getting more younger kids involved, they're playing lacrosse, they're playing basketball, they're playing these other sports. But if a guy that's played and watched baseball his whole life is getting frustrated and watching, how do we expect a young person with nothing, no idea about it, not to be bored or, it used to be fun, it seemed like.
Right.
It doesn't seem, we see basketball players having a lot of fun out here. Baseball doesn't seem as fun as it used to be.
Well, they don't play baseball anymore, hardly at all.
Right.
It's. I mean, a lot of kids don't play hardly any games at all. They go to all these showcases and everything else, and even when they're trying to go to get college notice, and they go all these things, they send out the tapes from these, and it's all about numbers, and everything. And it's a controlled environment where, I mean, years ago you went out and played. Well, now it's travel teams that travel all over the country for these showcase and all-star games and so forth. Well, for a lot of kids, that costs money.
Right. Oh yeah.
And I think what they've done, or they're starting to do, is they're pricing kids out of playing. So the kid goes and picks up another sport. That's why lacrosse is becoming so popular.
Yeah.
Soccer's becoming.
Well, we talked about it before with John, when I grew up, there were these travel teams, so you just have to go believe in the time we were in, that's where you played. But the problem is, all the kids that are good, for lack of a better word, these travel teams, the guy who's just average, I wasn't great at baseball, but I liked to play. But I know today, I was like, it's not really to that,
Yeah.
So if you're not winning and you're not, I don't want to play, it's not as fun. You're not do something else.
No, I don't think it's as fun. I mean, you have kids. That's why I'd rather see a lot of these kids play other sports. Now, baseball. I see kids that are, 15, 16 years old. They've been taking lessons and doing all this stuff since they were 8 years old. And they get to high school. By the time they get to high school, half of them are burnt out. They don't want it.
They didn't play the other sports.
No.
We also played basketball, football, and other sports. They're only playing baseball. Of course, it's something you're not.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And that's any sport. I mean, they do it with football players, mostly quarterbacks. You see all these high school kids and things like that. And
You're not as athletic if you're not playing the other sports. You limit yourself.
You just learn. I always liked playing other sports because I wasn't as good at them, but I learned how to get by and play on a team and stuff like that.
Right.
I just think it was valuable.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you didn't burn yourself out on one thing. Well, now having said that, if it would have been available when I was a kid, who's to say? I would have probably been that way because I really like baseball better than anything.
Right. Yeah.
So I might have been right there with them.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard when you're in that time frame. To be doing it. It's hard not to do it because you fall behind, or at least you think you might fall behind from other players that in your age group there. So yeah, it definitely makes it a little more challenging for that. Talking about playing with different teams and learning to play with teams. How was it with the coming here to Philadelphia and playing with the 80 team? You came in '79, but playing with the team that was basically built to win. How was that for you coming here?
Well, I think that basically it sort of jump started sort of like a second career for me.
Refresher.
I was when I was in Houston, I played every day. When I went to the Cubs, I was a part-time player, semi-platoon, but I still got a good number of at bats. When I came here, they had an all-star basically at every position.
Right, exactly. Hall of Famers as well.
Yeah, so I had to fit into a role, and that was going to be a bench role.
Mm-hmm.
And
So were you okay with that when you first came?
no, because I was used to I was used to playing.
Right.
But the guys in the team and the organization made it. It wasn't like on another team where a second division team, if you weren't playing, you weren't going to get in.
Right.
I mean, you just you sat there because they were always going to run young guys out, see what they could do. When you came here, all the roles had value.
Right.
And that's the way the Phillies made it for me. Pete Rose was always one who was always talking to you about, I don't know how you can sit there, go up, maybe not hit for 4 days and then go up and hit and get a hit or get on base and things like that. But they made it of value. On a winning club, the bench guy or pinch hitter or whatever had value. On a second division club, it didn't. So when I got here and we were successful and I had success doing it, it probably belonged to
Yeah. And plus, it rejuvenated it too. Exactly.
Yeah, because it's so much more fun
Right.
on a winning team.
Right. And like you said, you didn't feel bad sitting on the bench,
You
because
still always want to play.
Of course.
Yeah, and I mean, you always walk in and you looked at the lineup every day and figured today was going to be the day that you were going to play.
Right.
But when I did have success doing it, then I was fortunate enough to have some managers that would throw you out there and give you a start in order to keep you sharp.
Keep you fresh.
And that was probably as important as adjusting.
Yeah. You have to stay fresh. Yep. Hey, you got a question on Facebook?
A question from our online viewers. Greg, who was the pitcher you loved facing and did well against? And who was the toughest pitcher for you?
The guys that I did really well against,
Looking at your averages, pretty good. Most of them.
yeah, no, there was a lot of bad ones in there too. Somebody that I had a lot of at bats against was Steve Rogers, who pitched for Montreal. He was probably the one that I had the most success. Least success, probably, I would say Nolan Ryan, I didn't have very good average against. It wasn't that I didn't hit the ball or put the ball in play. It just didn't have a whole lot of success against him.
Don't feel bad. Not anything.
Yeah, but they were probably two. I had two favorite teams that I liked to play against. One was Montreal, and one was the Giants. I had real good success against those two teams, and it was funny because they were the two worst ballparks to play in when I was playing, Candlestick Park and Olympic Stadium. But that's where I had most of my success.
Well, then going from Houston to Philadelphia, I mean, it's both AstroTurf parks, but was there a major difference from one to the other, or one to the other?
I preferred Houston's AstroTurf, because there the AstroTurf was softer because it was underneath the padding and everything. It was dirt. All the other stadiums, it was asphalt.
Yeah.
So once it got worn down a little bit, it was like playing on a parking lot.
Right.
I mean, it was tough. It was maybe it was good I didn't play every day. It wasn't as hard on my legs.
Just one thing before we go too far into the show. We have some specials for today. We have City Vodka with lemonade for $4, and grab some boneless wings for $8. The food here is amazing, so don't miss out. And then you also have $10 wings as well. Plus all the burgers are good as well. I've had them. I'll put them up there with mine as well. But yes, get up there and help with the bartenders as well. But yeah, we get back to
The only other thing I was wondering is what that transition today, other than maybe Toronto, there's not much turf kind of fields left. But when you played, you had a transition one day to turf, one day to grass. What was that? Was it a mental state? I mean, what did you do to sort of transition from one to the next?
No, that wasn't. The transition wasn't that hard. You just knew some were quicker. The Phillies was quicker, so you had to play a little deeper. Montreal, St. Louis, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's wasn't as bad. St. Louis, day games. Yeah. The biggest thing was, pop-ups. If they hit, you had to be careful that, balls didn't bounce over your head. We're on, obviously the grass field. There was never a problem there, but the grass fields then weren't the way they are now. I mean, most of the ballparks now, it's like playing on a golf course. I mean, it's phenomenal, the fields now, the shape they're, and not only the big league fields, a lot of the minor league fields are just as good as the big league fields. And I probably noticed a bigger difference in the minor league fields because when I came up, there was rocks out there.
rocks and bottle caps.
Everything else.
You have the lights around.
Yeah, it wasn't. But now that's the big difference. They're used to playing on really good fields.
All right, so we have some trivia questions that we do, and City Vodka, City Distilling is gracious enough to have our prizes for the pouches. So,
Well, John, I guess the only rule would just be to ask to raise your hand. Just so
Yes.
Lauren kind of knows where to.
yeah, Lauren will come out. She's our Vanna White.
So I'll just start off with the top. So Greg holds the Phillies record for pitch hits.
How many does he have with the Phillies?
They're Googling.
Yeah. They can go. They've known us enough that they practice beforehand.
Is it?
You're a little out.
66?
No.
It is not.
Maybe another.
Almost halfway. No, more than that. It's in triple digits.
We started off top right off the bat.
Yeah. All right, here we go. We got another voter.
Definitely.
There you go.
It is
117, correct. Good job. There you go.
That's amazing. So I was looking it up. So 117 with the Phillies, fifth all time in major leagues. I mean, that's a tremendous when you actually think about it. I mean, is that sort of other than the World Series in '80? Is that sort of something that you're most proud of, or how do you?
I consider one to be able to last that long,
Sure.
to do it that many years, and have that total. I only messed up because I also walked over 100 times. I should have swung the bat.
But you're getting on base.
Yeah, and I think I'm the only one. That has over 100 pinch hits, 100 pinch hits.
There you go.
So,
100 club.
there you go.
So what does it take for the mentality to be a bench guy that said that you may not play for 3 days and then you have to come in and games on the line and you need to get a hit there. Buddy, go up there.
I don't think everyone can do that.
No.
That's tough.
Well, it ends up being, just sort of like like a challenge, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
And the fortunate thing for me, when I started doing it, I didn't have to change any kind of approach or anything,
Okay.
because almost all the time when I pinch hit, I let off in. And that's what I did when I played.
Okay.
I hit first or second most of my career. So my job was, at that time in that era, was just get on base. So I never had to change the thought process or anything like that when I started doing it. Whereas somebody like Del Unser, who was a teammate, he was sent up there with the thought of trying to hit the ball out of the ball. And so when Dell played a good bit, he was more of a line drive hitter, similar to me, but had more power. And so his job was trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark. And, so consequently, he had to change his approach to how he did things compared to me. So I think that was the benefit for me. I never had to. And if I pinch hit, usually if runners were on, they were in scoring position where, a single was going to drive in the run.
Right. Well, Lauren, you have another question?
We do, the gentleman right here in the front we have, wants to know if you still have your 19 championship.
Do I still have the ring? Yes.
Yep. Do you wear it often?
No, I don't. And that was a mistake on my part. I should have worn it. You did. But I haven't been out in a year and a half, so. I was lucky I found the shirt.
That's a nice shirt, too.
And we also would like to know if you would be a hitting coach.
What about the big coach?
If he would be one hand.
What would you do?
Would you like to get back involved in coaching?
Probably not. I think time has passed by on that. Only because not too many organizations are going to hire somebody my age now. So I'd say probably not. I would have liked to have done it. I wish, obviously would have liked to have done it a couple more years and then retired on my own rather than have COVID, forcing everything out, having it end that way.
Do you like sort of having some of that free time that you have now, or if you feel like maybe you could be an ambassador, one of those type roles, would that be something you'd be interested in? Or?
Oh, no, I wouldn't turn something like that down.
Right.
But to go somewhere and spend a season like I have, the 7 or 8 years that I did it with the Diamondbacks arena, that made it tough because you got to pick up, you leave. You leave first part of February, and you don't get back till the second week of September. For 7 years, that wears on you. Going back and forth. So not only on me, but the family and everything else. So the last 2 summers of being home have been nice, and I can still watch as much baseball as I want.
Right.
Talk to whoever I want to talk to, but I would probably, as a full-time job, I would probably say.
And who was the one teammate or two, multiple teammates that was the one guy that told you, taught you the most about being a baseball player, about being, a pinch hitter, possibly, with teams with Pete Rose and other guys who were in there, but who were guys that taught you the most?
Well, I think from the bench part of it, like I mentioned before, Del Unser and I are very good friends.
Right.
And he was probably, because he had done it for a few years. So from that standpoint, the being on the bench, I would say he did. As far as learning how to play the game and so forth, it'll be funny, but it happened in Denver, AAA. I had a teammate by the name of Gary Sutherland, who actually played for the Phillies when Gene Mock was here. And anybody that's old enough to follow the Phillies at that time, Gene Mock was a fanatic about
Fundamentals, yeah.
and everything else. And Gary Sutherland hit second and I hit first. His locker was right next to mine. So after games, he took the time. Here's a guy who had already had 8 years in big leagues. And at that time, that's where a lot of your minor league coaches at a higher level came from. Because we had a manager. That was it.
Okay.
We had no pitching coach. We had no hitting coach. It was basically, there was 3 guys on that AAA team that had at least 3 or 4 years or more experience in the big leagues.
Wow.
And they acted as basically player coaches.
Okay.
So after every game, we'd sit there in front of the locker room. He would go over positioning, probably shouldn't have been as aggressive on the bases that time because of the way the score and where we were in the game and everything. So I had a pretty good education that year. And when I got to the big leagues the next year, a lot of it wasn't new to me. I guess you could say I was ready to handle the situation as far as the fundamental part of
Right.
the game goes. So those 2. And then also I had mentioned before, Pete, when I was that bench player, Pete was this way with all the bench guys. He was always talking to me about how hard a job it is and all the things, and always trying to be positive. So him and Dale were probably the 2 when I got here to Philadelphia.
Very cool. Very cool. And then what are some of your moments that you remember from like the World Series, the actual World Series playing the Royals? We'll get into the NLCS in a minute. But that was a
Well,
series.
unfortunately, not unfortunately, I just didn't see a whole lot of action.
Right.
Because at that time it was a year of the DH, and so I played some defense and had a sacrifice bunt and grounded out once, and that's that series. But I just didn't get to hit. I wasn't used the way I would have been used had it been
Did you have some championship games leading up to that point at the high school level, college level? I mean, have you had a sort of a championship team before that?
No, never. Was always on a second division team in the minor leagues. So that was my first taste of playoff atmosphere, World Series. And I mean, the whole atmosphere was great because as soon as you walked into the ballpark, it was like, I always describe it as, it's like there was always a buzz right from the first start.
Right.
BP on. It was like power lines. It was like there was a underground buzz, sort of like, I guess, excitement.
Yeah, the energy. Yeah.
Everything was heightened, but it was fun. All of it was
And did
always
you
fun.
feel nervousness or were you just excited?
No, I didn't feel nervous. I mean, I had, I guess, which I always had when I hit, that anticipation of going up. Not angst or anything. It wasn't fear. It was just that, hey, let's go. The only time I was ever really, really nervous was my very first at-bat. Yeah, that was the only time. I couldn't feel my legs.
Yeah, sure.
It was just, and it was over. And I went back. I pitched it, and I went back in the dugout and sat down in the dugout. And I was totally drenched. It was like I had played 9 innings, and I only had 1 at bat. I saw 5 pitches. That was it. But that was the only time that I was that nervous at the plate.
Yeah. So you got another trivia question?
Yeah, so let's see here. So Greg has the major league record for most pitch hit walks. Does anyone know what that number is?
Yeah, you're a regular,
Yeah.
Is it also 117?
It
It
is.
is also in 17.
Yeah. Congratulations there, Mike Schmidt. There you go. See that? It's a good thing you study up now, right?
So then, Greg, so you go on, you win a World Series. I mean, that's obviously an exciting thing, but to never have sort of had a sort of championship sort of season or anything like that before that, was that just sort of unreal to you? Did it feel like it was actually happening as it was happening? Or?
No, I don't think it really sunk in until, I think it sunk in when we had the parade. Everything after that, like, the party and champagne and everything in the clubhouse and all that was crazy. It was fun, but I think when it sunk in was the parade. Going down Broad Street, everybody lining the street, and I always say, I said, it's the only time you're going to go down Broad Street where everybody's smiling.
Right. Oh yeah.
Everybody was in a good mood.
Right.
And then going into the old JFK there, and the reception that we got there, it was just tremendous. And I think that's when it sunk in. And most players won't experience that unless they go through a winning situation.
Right.
Because that's when you realize what that city's team means to the city.
Right. Yeah.
The way it lifted everybody's spirits and everybody in a good mood. Everybody was having fun. The same thing would happen when he was.
Oh yeah.
It's just, I mean, that's when you understand the fan side of it. When you're on the side I was on, you're worried about obviously playing, doing well, having a career and everything else. And you're sort of locked into just you.
Right. Oh yeah.
But then when something good like that happens, and then the joy and everything that everybody had, that's when it sinks in that it's more than just you.
Sure.
Yeah.
It means something to an awful lot of people.
And especially that year too, because the '80s, all four sports teams were in the championship. In
Yeah.
The 80s, so.
And the thing is, they had lost 3 playoffs.
Right. Previous.
And everything. So, and then we had the weird '79 year where all the pitchers got hurt.
Right.
So no, it was a big year and it was an important year because the guys, a lot of the guys, obviously Pete and some of the other ones weren't getting younger.
Right.
I mean, they were still productive, but you're always wondering how long that window is going to
Exactly.
last.
Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of the players say. Once they turned on the Broad Street, that's when it hit them. To see the sea of red, and the Eagles, when everybody was green, just seeing that was just 2 million people.
Yeah,
behind
I mean,
the streets.
it was amazing.
To come out to celebrate that was got to be goosebumps.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Lauren, we have another question out there.
We do, yes.
Hey, well, I'll go over here so you don't have feedback. Because I'm hi. So, Greg, how you doing? My name is Ethan over here. I wanted to ask you about the NLCS and NTA. Because you mentioned the World Series, you didn't do much, but you did something a little bit more special in the NLCS, didn't you?
Well,
I think it was called the most important bunt in Phillies history.
You're reading my notes, aren't you?
I'm excited.
yeah. Well, it was a good playoff series. I got to pinch hit 4 times, had 3 hits. The bunt came in the 5th game, 8th inning, down 5-2. And I think I mentioned earlier that I didn't have a whole lot of success against Nolan Ryan, and we had guys on first and second, nobody out, down 3 runs. So, and I was notorious for taking first pitch, almost exclusively, and everybody knew it. But I thought if Nolan Ryan has that thought that I might take, he might just lay a ball in there, like a BB fastball and not his normal stuff. And if he does, because I saw Enos Cabell, the third baseman, playing behind the bag at third, talking to Lee Ely, the third base coach, when I was coming up to the plate. And I said, if he stays back, I'm gonna try and bunt because I'll be the tying run with the top of the lineup coming up behind me. And fortunately for me, Nolan Ryan did throw a strike, and it wasn't his best fastball. So the other thing you have to take into consideration is in the Astrodome, the turf is flat, where in all the other stadiums with turf, it's crowned. So that's why I didn't bunt very much, because at the vet, if you bunted the ball like I did there, it would have rolled foul.
Right.
Because they crowned them for drainage. Well, you didn't have that in the Astrodome. And when I played the Astrodome, I would bunt. But that was, you know, probably the first time I bunted in, a sacrifice bunt in 7 years, because I wasn't playing on a flat surface. So all the ducks lined up right. And fortunately for me, I was able to get the bunt down. We got on. We ended up tying and winning an extra inning. So, yeah, that's probably the most important, other than my first hit. That was probably the most important hit I had.
Yeah. And a little insider notice, information was playing there with the Astros. And
Yeah.
Did everyone know that at that time? I mean, was that a common thing with
Yeah,
people do that?
yeah, everybody. It was a slower turf,
Right.
and it was flat.
Right.
Yeah, and like you said, you're a normal, take pitches. So
Yeah, I took a lot.
So you beat the analytics.
You don't see many of those bumps.
Well, yeah, my
it.
analytics on taking the first pitch would have been
Right.
probably me and Bobby Abreu would have been fighting for, that 90%
Oh yeah.
or above as far as taking the first pitch.
Exactly. So you've coached with the Phillies through the minor leagues as well, and also at the major league level. How was it? You went through that great time when you had Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, Ryan Howard, and Jim told me when you were there the first time when you closed the vet and opened the assistant bank park. How was it coaching those guys? And how much did they make it easier or harder for you?
Most of those guys knew themselves probably better than anybody else.
Right.
And what you do is coach with those kind of guys is you just make yourself available in order for you to work in. It sort of makes it easy on you.
Okay.
The guys that are tough are the guys that are always tinkering, fooling around with something. This doesn't work, so I'm going to try that. And it's not that they're bad guys. I mean, some of my favorite players were that way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They couldn't, they were never satisfied. They thought they were going to turn good into better, and
Right.
a lot of times it didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, Cal Ripken's famous for that.
Yeah, but Harris is a good player.
And
Probably the biggest one here, as far as that is going, was Raul Ibanez.
Yeah.
We always used to joke he had a whole big chest full of gadgets, for drills and everything else, and he was a good player, and he had some really good years, but he would tinker more than anybody.
now, is that a good thing, or obviously depending on the player? But I mean, do you think it's better to focus like one way or to tinker?
Well, with Raul, it didn't hurt. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He still put up good numbers. I mean, he would try different stuff, but then when he went into the game, it was pretty much,
Back to basics.
whatever he did.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, some other guys, that might not be the case. I always refer to it as a guy, instead of going out and playing the game, he was trying to work at the game during the game.
Right.
And I always used to try to tell him, that's why they call it early work and play the game. They don't call it they don't call it work.
Right.
It's at 7:30.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's been some players that I think have, curtailed what I think they could have done as a hitter, and haven't gotten, the numbers that they should have gotten.
Did you know towards the end of your career that you wanted to get involved in coaching to stay involved, or is that something you always knew you wanted to do when you were done playing? Or how did that come about?
Well, when I first quit playing, I thought I thought I could still play, and I just couldn't. And unfortunately for me, when after the '89 season, there was no jobs as far as going to spring training, as a non-roster player, because there was a lockout. So nobody was inviting anybody to spring training. Well, they eventually opened up spring training, but then it was just, there was no invites. So I sat out that year, then went back the next year to San Diego, their spring training as a non-roster player, and had a good spring. And then the day before the season started, they let me go because I was a non-roster player.
Right.
So came home. So I really wasn't ready to coach because I thought I could still play. So I didn't do anything baseball wise for a year or so. And I was working for a real estate company at that time, in 92. And through a real estate deal, another agent who had a son that was going to Malvern Prep said their baseball coach had to resign for health reasons and wanted to know if I was interested in coaching. So that's basically how I got into coaching, through a real estate deal. So then, and Malvern Prep was 5 minutes from my house. So
That made it easier.
and I went and I coached high school there for a little over 3 years, and then got a job with the Rockies.
Yeah.
So, and you coached, sort of from the New York Penn League all the way up to AAA.
Right.
So you've had some longer bus rides and not so nice facilities to some nicer facilities. I mean, how would you sort of rate your overall experience? You were at every level.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the New York Penn League was tough. That was really tough. Probably the most fun that we had in the minor leagues was the years in Reading.
Yeah.
Just the atmosphere in Reading, the people there, who most of them are still there, who we still hear from. It was just a fun place to go and work. And then I was fortunate to have a couple of years in Lehigh, nice ballpark. And after the first year or two, that settled in to be a really nice place to work also. And then fortunately, I came back up here halfway through 2002.
Talk about the 80 NLCS with your bunt. How intense was that series? I mean, that was epic series, back and forth, extra innings, basically every game. How was that being in the dugout? Every
A lot of highs and lows.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, one inning when we go ahead, yep, we're going to the series. And then they tie it up and go ahead and you go, oh shit, we're going home.
Right.
It was that kind of thing. But I got to say, I have never been in a facility that was as loud as the Astrodome was.
Okay.
Those 3 games. I mean, you could barely carry on a conversation.
Really?
In the dugout. It was
Wow.
like I can imagine it's like going to a big college Saturday football game. That's what it was like.
Okay.
It was just constant the whole time. It was unbelievable. Even after the game was over, your ears were still ringing.
Oh, yeah, because I was at the '93 World Series and stuff, and that was loud for that.
Mhm.
So I was a little shocked that you said the Astrodome. Well, I guess the dome maybe too.
Well,
That-
I think the playoffs game at Citizens Bank were
Yeah.
louder than because the fans were close.
Right.
You know, the vet was so big,
Right.
you know, just, you lost a lot of that.
Yeah, but it was shaky.
Oh, no, it was loud. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no doubt
Yeah,
about that.
that definitely was loud. I mean, what were some of the moments that you still remember thinking about, like with that NLCS and just amazing, amazing things that
Oh, I don't,
positive or negative, type of thing.
no, it was just was a neat atmosphere. I guess because we won,
Made it better.
made it. But there was so many things. The kind of series that Terry Poole had for them seemed like he was coming up every inning. That rings a bell.
I mean, facing that pitcher,
Dell Unser's big hits. I
Right.
mean,
Manny Trio.
Manny Trio, all those kind of things. The weird, I guess, the weird plays that happen, umpire wise. Manny's great relay throw, cut down, go ahead, run.
Right.
Their guy who would have scored an easy run leaves early on a tag play for an out at the end of an inning.
Yeah.
They're the kind of things that when you think back on it, that changed the course of what happened.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's. Do you have any more questions on Facebook there?
Tyler O'Brien is asking if he's an Eagles fan.
Are you an Eagles fan?
I watch them every Sunday. I didn't grow up, being
Central PA, where you
Yeah. It was, we followed. We were Colts, Baltimore Colts, because that was the team that was on TV at home.
That's
So
one of the great parts. I have some friends over there. You can get the Pittsburgh, Philly, and Baltimore.
yeah, you can now. You can now. When I was a kid, you couldn't.
Right, yeah.
There was too. The reception wasn't good. Yeah, but no, I would follow them.
Do you have an opinion on the Eagles this year?
Say it again.
Do you have an opinion on the Eagles this year?
Give an opinion.
The Eagles this year.
What's interesting? I mean, I see a lot of good things. I didn't care much for the play calling on the goal line, but I think I have a lot of company there.
Right.
But no, I've been impressed. It's got to be tough. First year quarterback, no preseason last year. Everything done on computers, and this is his first exposure to it. I'm sort of optimistic that it's going to be a pretty decent season.
Yeah.
So how about the Phillies? Then we can obviously watch a lot of baseball this year. What's your overall feeling? You think that they can make the playoffs? You feel like they're not consistent enough? What are your thoughts?
Well, they're definitely not consistent. That goes without saying. But no, they still have a chance because other teams in the division were in the same boat.
Right. Yeah.
Early it looked like Atlanta was going to run away with it, but then they got hammered with injuries and stuff and everything. So they opened up the door for everybody else. And Washington traded everybody away. The Mets are the Mets. And no, they still have a shot. I mean, a lot's going to boil down, obviously, this homestand. They have Pittsburgh coming in.
Gotta win those games.
The Orioles and Pittsburgh and
So streaming.
probably the 3 games with Atlanta are going to be huge games.
And then you
And
got
then the tough thing is they have to finish with the Marlins. And the Marlins got really good pitching. Anytime you got good pitching, you can shut the
Take a
things
step
down.
back and just look at the record without knowing anything else. I mean, playing like the 500 teams, so that's the definition. It's not consistent. You know, you win a couple games, lose a couple games, or just a couple games.
Yeah, I think the most disappointing thing has been the back end of the bullpen,
Right.
which everybody thought was going to be a lot better. But when you blow that many saves during the course of the season, it's going to be real hard to compete. It really is. But like they don't have a whole lot of it's funny. It's a funny club. They don't have a whole lot of constants.
Right.
Yeah. They got a lot of good players too. That's
Yeah.
the thing that's shocking.
At the end of the year, you're going to have 5 or 6 guys that have really good numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems like a lot of those numbers come really streaky.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, player will get hot for 10 days and be out of this world. And then he'll go 2.5 weeks where, where's the other?
Right.
Do you think
And
that's
that's-
something to do with the leadership? So when we were talking with him in our meeting, he said, back in the day, someone stood up there and Bell and said, hey, let's get our stuff together. I don't, from the outsider, you don't necessarily see that, but I don't know what you're.
Yeah, that would be hard to tell because the way Bryce plays and the way Rio Muto plays, they're playing hard and everything else. You would hope that those kind of guys playing the way they do would set a good example. But not being in the clubhouse, it's hard because players, and Mickey would probably tell me the same thing, players today are a lot different.
Yeah.
It's very hard to, even for a coach, to criticize a player. There's no such thing as constructive criticism.
Yeah. It's all positive.
Yeah, you got to be positive, and there's a process. You got to figure we're going through a process. Well, for me, process, heck with process.
Yeah.
You got to go find a way to score more runs than the opposition that night. And it doesn't matter, I think they script too much out.
In the game,
I
yeah.
think some of the field that is going out of the game. I think when they use a pitcher, the guy can't go more than 2 days.
Yeah,
He pitched this many pitches, now he's got to sit 2 days. This guy has to rest. Well, he did it this year.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 4 games into the season and they're already resting the play.
Yeah.
I mean, why? I mean, you got to have a feel for knowing your club, when a guy's tired, when he needs a break. And I think it's pretty obvious for players too. I don't think it has to be scripted out. Like, okay, 2 days, you're having an off day. Well, what if he goes 7 for 7?
You don't want to take them out then.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing that does bother me with the way they try to script it.
We have one more question here before we end the show here tonight.
So going off that, I think Bryce Harper should win that game.
I think the way he's played the last 2 months, he definitely is a front runner because of, Tatis probably would have been, right there, but they've sort of fallen off the wayside there.
Greg, if they don't make the playoffs this year, will he get it? And if he doesn't, would he still deserve it? Because everyone usually.
I think he's the front runner right now. Win or lose.
I wouldn't beat a lot of those games up, so.
No, and like I said, there's nobody that really is, we don't have anybody in the National League like Vlad Guerrero
Right.
and those kind of people putting up those kind of numbers. We don't have it. I guess you could make a case. You could have made a case for Muncy with the Dodgers, but he's sort of fallen off too.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the kind of year he has, I would say he would be my second choice.
Yeah.
Tatis would be my third.
Yeah, he got hurt, and otherwise he probably would be
Yeah.
the leader, in the clubhouse there. But yeah, being hurt. So we ended another hour. We just want to once again thanks Jimmy here at Hanrahan's Irish Pub for having us out here. Thanks for everybody who came out. Make sure you take care of the bartenders and everybody. And we will be back here on October the 20th. We're going to have Brian Propp is going to be here. I know we had mentioned Brian Propp was going to be at Dagwoods, but we had a scheduling conflict. So Dickie Knowles will be actually on the 13th at Dagwoods, and Brian Propp will be here on the 20th. So just want to again thank Greg for coming out, and thanks Jimmy, and thanks to our sponsors, State Farm, Philip Young, City Distilling, Aberson and Denenberg, Carl's Cards and Collectibles, Dagwoods Pub, and also here at Hanrahan's Irish Pub. Thanks again for everybody. And Carl, we're glad you're home, and make sure Sue cooks you breakfast tomorrow.
See you.
Thanks.